During a high-stakes, live TV segment, Liberal host Rebecca Langford launched a scathing attack on President Donald Trump, calling him the worst leader in American history. Confident in her stance, she expected to dominate the conversation. However, Vice President JD Vance, seated across from her, remained calm and composed. As millions watched, the tension in the studio became palpable. Vance, known for his sharp rhetoric, wasted no time dismantling Langford's claims, exposing her media bias in real time. What began as a routine debate quickly escalated into a defining moment that would shake the media world to its core. The tension in the studio was suffocating as Rebecca Langford, a staunch liberal TV host, leaned forward with a smirk, ready to deliver her attack. "Let's not sugarcoat it, Mr. Vice President," she said confidently. "Donald Trump is the worst president this country has ever had. He is a failure, a disgrace, and he doesn't know what he's doing. The American people deserve better." Her words hung in the air, and for a moment there was silence. The audience gasped, the production crew froze, and even the control room held its breath. It was an outright, unfiltered condemnation of the sitting president, delivered with unwavering certainty. Langford, known for her relentless criticism of Trump, expected to control the conversation as she always had. She had built her career on pushing this narrative, and tonight was supposed to be no different. JD Vance, however, remained calm, his sharp eyes locked onto Langford's with unwavering intensity. He did not flinch, did not blink. Instead, he took a deep breath and leaned in slightly, his expression unreadable. The atmosphere crackled with anticipation. This was not just another political debate, this was a battle unfolding before millions of viewers. Langford, sensing a shift in the energy, crossed her arms. She was used to guests backing down, fumbling through defensive explanations. But Vance showed no signs of retreat. His steady demeanor unsettled her. "Rebecca," he said finally, his voice firm but controlled, "I was hoping we'd have an honest discussion tonight. But you just proved why the media has lost the trust of the American people." For the first time, Langford's smirk faltered. This wasn't the response she had expected. She had anticipated a defensive scramble, an emotional outburst, something she could easily dismantle. But instead, Vance was turning the spotlight onto her, exposing the very bias she had built her career upon. She scoffed, shaking her head dismissively. "Oh, please. Deporting people doesn't make America great," she shot back, trying to regain control. Vance's expression didn't change. "It makes America safe," he countered. His words were sharp, calculated. He wasn't here to play games, and Langford was quickly realizing that this debate wasn't going the way she had planned. The audience remained glued to their screens, sensing that this moment was only the beginning of something much bigger. JD Vance remained composed, his eyes locked onto Rebecca Langford as she scoffed at his defense of President Trump. She was used to dominating conversations, shutting down dissenting voices with ease. But this time, something was different. Vance wasn't flustered, nor was he scrambling to justify Trump's presidency. Instead, he was waiting for the perfect moment to strike. "You say President Trump is a failure," Vance said, his voice steady. "Let's talk facts." He turned toward the camera, addressing the millions watching at home. "In just over a month, this administration has done what the last refused to do: secure our borders. Illegal immigration is at an all-time low because President Trump fights every single day to keep Americans safe." Langford, desperate to regain control, rolled her eyes. "Oh, please," she sneered. "Deporting people doesn't make America great." Vance's expression didn't waver. "It makes it safe," he countered. "It keeps families from being victims of violent crime. And let's not forget, this administration has done more for American workers than any Democrat president in the last 50 years. Langford's confidence wavered. She glanced at the teleprompter, searching for a new angle. But Vance wasn't finished. "You call him a failure," he continued, "but Americans see a leader who works tirelessly signing laws, making his every move public for transparency. He doesn't hide behind the media. He speaks directly to the people, unfiltered, unafraid." The studio was silent. Langford's fingers tightened around the stack of papers in front of her. She had never been challenged like this. Never had someone dismantle her arguments so effortlessly. "You're defending a man who spends half his day ranting on X," she snapped, her voice edged with frustration. "He's not a leader. He's a reality TV president." Vance exhaled, leaning back. "That's why America is thriving," he shot back. "That's why crime rates are dropping, job numbers are soaring, and we're finally taking care of our veterans. Tell me, Rebecca, what exactly do you define as failure?" Langford opened her mouth, but no words came out. The control room was in chaos. The producers realized they had made a fatal mistake inviting JD Vance and thinking they could control him. Langford was losing, and America was watching it unfold in real time. The atmosphere in the studio was suffocating. Rebecca Langford, once the confident and commanding host, was now visibly shaken. Her usual air of superiority had started to crumble as JD Vance continued his relentless dismantling of her arguments. The audience could see it. The millions watching at home could feel it. She was losing control. Vance leaned in slightly, his voice firm but unwavering. "Rebecca, you called President Trump a failure," he said, his words deliberate. "But let's talk about what failure really looks like." His gaze was piercing, his tone unshakable. "For years, we've had leaders who ignored crime, abandoned our borders, and let hard-working Americans struggle while the media covered for them. That's failure." Langford's lips parted, but no words came. She adjusted the papers on her desk, her hands trembling slightly. She glanced at the teleprompter, hoping for anything to regain control of the conversation. But the words on the screen no longer mattered. The audience wasn't buying her narrative anymore. Vance wasn't finished. "And failure," he continued, "is when the media lies to the very people they are supposed to inform. You sit here, night after night, pushing an agenda rather than reporting facts. That's why Americans have lost trust in the media. Because of moments like this." A thick silence filled the room. Langford's face paled as she fumbled for a response. She had never been challenged so directly. She had built her career on crafting narratives, steering discussions in a way that always placed her in control. But tonight was different. Her earpiece crackled to life. "Rebecca, move on. Change the subject," her producer's voice urged, frantic. But she couldn't. JD Vance had seized the moment, and there was no escaping it. She took a shaky breath. You're twisting this," she stammered. "The media holds people like Trump accountable. That's our job." Vance shook his head, exhaling sharply. "No, Rebecca," he said. "Your job is to tell the truth. And tonight, America is seeing exactly why you and your network have lost all credibility." In the control room, panic set in. Phones were ringing, producers scrambled, but it was too late. Langford was exposed, unraveling before millions. And JD Vance had just delivered the biggest reality check in modern media history. Rebecca Langford's fingers twitched as she clutched the edges of her desk. Her once steady voice had faltered, her usual commanding presence now reduced to uncertainty. JD Vance had done what no guest before him had. He had taken control of the conversation, stripped away the media's polished narrative, and exposed the bias for millions to see. Then, it happened. A voice crackled in Langford's earpiece, urgent and panicked. "Rebecca, they're pulling the plug on you." Her eyes widened, her throat tightened. "What?" she whispered, barely audible. The control room had made its decision. The network executives, watching the disastrous segment unfold in real time, knew they had no choice. The backlash was immediate, the phone lines lighting up with angry viewers calling in. Sponsors were threatening to pull their ads. The network's credibility was crumbling with every passing second. JD Vance, still seated across from her, watched as the reality of the moment settled in. Langford, the woman who had built her career on attacking Trump and silencing opposition, was now the one being silenced. Langford's earpiece buzzed again. "You're done. You're fired." The words hit her like a truck. Her skin went pale, her hands trembling as she struggled to process what was happening. Live in front of millions. She turned off camera, desperate for someone to intervene, for a producer, an executive, anyone to save her. But the control room was silent. No one was coming to her rescue. JD Vance leaned forward, his voice calm but firm. "You see, Rebecca," he said, "this is what happens when the truth comes out. The American people are tired of being lied to. And tonight, they saw through it." Langford swallowed hard, her eyes darting around the studio. The teleprompter was no longer feeding her lines. The safety net she had relied on for years had vanished. Then, in a move that had never happened before, the network cut the live feed. The screen went black. But it was too late. The internet was already ablaze, social media exploding with clips of JD Vance's takedown. The fallout was immediate and unstoppable. Within minutes of the network cutting the live feed, social media erupted. Hashtags like "Truth Wins," "Judd Vance exposes of media," and "Rebecca Langford fired" began trending across platforms. Clips of JD Vance's brutal dismantling of Langford's narratives spread like wildfire. News outlets, commentators, and everyday Americans weighed in, some in shock, others in celebration. At the White House, President Trump leaned back in his chair, watching the viral moment unfold. A satisfied smile crossed his face. He turned to an aide and said, "Vance just did what we've been waiting for. The American people finally see the truth." Moments later, he took to social media, praising Vance. JD Vance exposed the lies of the fake news media tonight. The truth is winning, and America is waking up. GREATJOBJD. As support for Vance surged, Rebecca Langford's world collapsed. Her inbox was flooded not with sympathy, but with condemnation. Sponsors were pulling out, colleagues were distancing themselves, and her name was now synonymous with media deception. Sitting alone in her dimly lit apartment, Rebecca scrolled through the thousands of comments under her name. She got exactly what she deserved. "The media has been lying to us for years tonight. They got exposed. JD Vance just changed everything." Tears welled in her eyes. For the first time, she truly saw what had happened. She hadn't just lost a debate, she had been part of a system that manipulated the truth. She had spent years controlling the narrative, but tonight, the narrative had controlled her. Then, her phone rang. A number she didn't recognize. She hesitated, then answered. "Rebecca, it's JD Vance." Her stomach twisted. "Why are you calling me?" There was a pause. Then, Vance's voice came through, calm yet firm. "Because this isn't just about politics. It's about truth." Langford wiped her eyes. "You humiliated me on live TV." "No," Vance corrected. "The truth did. And you know it." She took a shaky breath. "What do you want from me?" "To realize it's not too late," Vance said. "You don't have to be the villain here. The American people aren't against you because of who you are. They're against the lies you helped spread." Rebecca's heart pounded. She had spent her career believing she was on the right side of history. But deep down, she knew she had been fighting against the truth. The world was watching again. This time, it wasn't JD Vance shutting down a corrupt journalist. It was Rebecca Langford stepping in front of the cameras. No script, no earpiece, no producers controlling her words. She took a deep breath. "I was wrong," she said, her voice steady but full of emotion. "I have spent years pushing a narrative that wasn't true. I called President Trump a failure, but I never looked at the facts. I let my personal bias cloud my judgment. But the truth is, Trump is fighting for America. JD Vance is fighting for America. And I was fighting against it." The newsroom was silent. Across the country, millions of Americans were glued to their screens. Some called it the greatest betrayal in media history. Others called it the greatest redemption arc of all time. "The media has lied to you," Langford continued. "I was part of it. But today, I choose to stand for the truth." The moment was history in the making. JD Vance hadn't just exposed the lies, he had awakened a nation. And Rebecca Langford, once the face of media manipulation, had just taken her first step toward redemption. 4-0